Hey there, I'm Brad Miller, and today with Jason Medford, and we are walking the spiritual path with you. And today, on our episode, um, we wanted to little talk about. So, if you were there for the last episode, we talked a little bit about teachers and masters, and the fact that a spiritual master is not really a teacher in the sense that you would think of, like maybe you did in elementary or high school or something. Um, and so today we kind of want to build upon that and talk about the fact that not only are masters or guides, whatever like that, are they teachers? They're not teachers, but you already know the answers to your questions. Like you don't actually need the masters to tell you these things because everything is inside you. And so that I think is a great lead in for today, as we kind of go further into, because I know when I started kind of this path, there was a lot of questions in my mind of what do I do? Like, how do I get these things that I want? Or how do I know the next step? And so the first thing is, I think that just kind of naturally comes is like, well, let me look online. Let me do a search if I can find, spiritual paths. What's the next step? Or I try to maybe ask other people, like, hey, Jason, what was your first step? And that must be my first step too. And we try to go off of what other people have done and kind of follow them, copycat them essentially. But as I've kind of gone through here now, and I've, a couple years into it, realizing that, um, yeah, you can get some guidance, maybe you get some inklings one way or the other, but ultimately the steps, what you're supposed to do, it's all kind of inside you.
Well, and it's interesting because everybody's path is unique to them.
Hmm.
And so, again, it's like with my mentor, he always says, my relationship with you is unique. It's different than my relationship with that person or that person or that person. And so even though we may hear some of the same things, we may, receive some of the same practices or exercises or information, data given to us,
Hmm.
how he works with each one of us is different. And how we choose to follow or do kind of goes back to the tilt equity and art that we talked a little bit about on last episode too, right?
Hmm.
But like you said, I think there's so much of the time we want to just kind of copy somebody else,
Hmm.
which is really not the right way to do it, right? We can look at someone that we admire. We can look at maybe a master. We can look at somebody who we know that maybe has something we want to have
Hmm.
or is the kind of person that we would like to become. And we can emulate certain things, but we don't want to just copy,
Yep.
right? If that makes sense. So it's like, you don't go out and buy the same clothes as the other person and start drinking the same soda if you're drinking soda or whatever, right? Of the other person just because that's what they're doing. Now, you may try it and it may serve you and you may like it, but you're not necessarily doing it just to copy, and you should be doing it in your own authentic way.
Hmm.
Not just because we learn from other people, but we don't just copy other people
Yep.
in what we're doing.
Yep, exactly. The 3D example here, if I want to learn how to give a really good argument in court, there's a lot of really good people you can watch. There's arguments in the movies, there's TV, on YouTube, different videos. And you can copy what they say and you can use their same phrases and things like that. But at the end of the day, you've got to figure out what works for you. If I'm trying to, give a closing statement like Johnny or like Matlock does, it's not going to sit the same way. It's not going to work out that way because I'm not Matlock. I don't have the same delivery. I don't have the same, cases that he does and the same kind of, all these different things about him and me are different. And so I can learn things from him. I can take maybe little bits and pieces of what he's doing and what he how he does things. Maybe in his preparation, maybe I can use that as an example of way to help kind of prepare things, or some of the ways that he structures something, or whatever. But at the end of the day, if I try to pretend I'm Matlock, it's not going to work out. People are going to be like, he seems phony, he seems fake, and I'm not going to get the result that I'm looking for. And so the same thing applies here in the spiritual world as well.
Yeah, we can't just copy somebody else because that's not authentic. We
Hmm.
can learn from them, but then we have to incorporate it into our own way of doing it
Yep.
as well. And I think this is where, again, it kind of goes back to a little bit of what we talked about last time, that, you know, masters don't teach per se, right? And they make you kind of get your own answers or find your own answers.
Hmm.
And so, what's interesting is, again, I mean, I can ask questions, but usually when I ask questions, what I get is maybe an answer, maybe, but then five more questions that come out of that answer, right? And so, or, I've watched this a lot where somebody will ask a question and then we get the answer, but the answer is not really what the question was. It was what we needed to hear, if that makes sense. So again, sometimes people who are masters will not necessarily answer the question you've asked. They'll
Hmm.
answer the question you need to hear or provide you with information so you can get the answer that you need to get. And it may be different for other people. And again, that's, one of the differences between people who are truly masters, but they never claim to be masters. I think that's one of
Hmm.
the other things. There's a humbleness with them.
A name tag says I'm master. Hello, my name is, or anything.
Yeah, hello, my name is, right? Um, versus somebody who's a guru that wants people to follow them,
Mm.
right? There's a difference. Masters don't look for followers. They're not trying to get people to follow them. They're not trying to get people to believe what they say necessarily. They're just living their life. They're doing what they're here to do. And if you like it, great. If you don't, great, right? They're just doing what they need to do. And I think this is too one of the things that I've seen a lot of people frustrated with is when they actually meet a true master, they don't appreciate them
Mm-hmm.
because they think, well, you're not really giving me anything that I don't already know or that I can't already Google. Oh, really? Right? Or this other person over here that I paid $10,000 to gives me a list of 20 things. And what are you giving me? You're just telling me the same stories over and over again, and I don't understand.
Hmm.
Okay. Right. And so I think that's, it's one of the reasons why so many people get confused or set aside the really valuable things because sometimes they're so simple and they're not the direct answer that people want, that they'd rather, instead of having the gold, they'd rather go have the brass over here and pay a lot of money, pay gold price for brass because the person giving him the brass is giving him a 20-step process, telling them what to do,
Hmm.
stroking their ego because now you're in my inner circle. You're close to me. You're close to the guru, right? And so it strokes people's ego, and so often people are blinded and they think they're buying gold, but it's brass, and they're
Hmm.
ignoring the gold that's actually being given to them. I don't know if it makes sense
Yeah, yeah, no,
what I'm
and
saying.
I think a lot of times we like the complexity. We feel value in the complexity. So if you just give us blah, very simple, very succinct, you're like, oh, okay, what's the value in that? But if you give them a nice elaborate step process, and you go through all these different things, you feel like, oh, well, I've got my money's worth. And I see this in the law too with my clients that, if I say, okay, well, here's the answer, to their question here, this solves your problem, and it takes me 5 minutes, they don't value that nearly as much as if I say, okay, well, let's sit down and let's do an analysis and let's weigh the pros and cons and let's think of, and weigh everything else, and I come back, 10 hours later with something like, well, if it took him 10 hours to come up with this, it must be very valuable, right? No, not
It is
necessarily.
for you because you can charge them for 10 hours of work.
Well, except that I don't charge hourly, but that's another
Yeah, I know.
podcast.
But anyway,
Um, but I think that's just kind of an innate within people that we look for the complexity because we somehow associate that, with value. It took him a while to come up with it, so it must be more valuable. It's more complex. It must be more valuable. Um, I don't have my shirt on today, but I've got a shirt about, the Steve Jobs quote about simplicity. Um, but a lot of times it's the simplest things that are the hardest, that are actually the most valuable to us. We just don't realize it
yeah.
because it's not what we think we're supposed to be getting.
Well, and I think it kind of goes back too to, that we already know the answers, but we want to look to somebody else to tell us the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking outside. And so, yeah, if I go to an attorney and they spend 10 hours on it and they give me an answer, then I feel more comfortable with that. If I'm, on the spiritual path and I go to somebody and pay them a lot of money and they give me a 20-step process, well, like you said, it must be more valuable, right? It must
Mm-hmm.
be what I need to do. But the interesting thing is, we already know what we need to do. We already know the answers if we'll be in the silence to hear them or if we'll actually trust and follow it. But sometimes it scares the shit out of us, honestly, right? When we know what we're supposed to do and we just really don't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the process, right? And so again, even I've done this where there's been certain, life decisions that I had to make, and I go back and forth on this a little bit. Sometimes I want some clear guidance,
Mm-hmm.
on what decision I should make.
Give me the sign. Tell me yes, no. What is
Yeah,
it?
I want the heavens to part and I want, whatever to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it does go that way and sometimes it doesn't because I remember one time it was early in my life. I was still a teenager and I was kind of praying for an answer. And what I sensed was a being saying, "You already know the answer." Right. So here I am praying to God at this point in my life when I was religious. And yet what I'm hearing is, "You already know the answer," which seems a little odd as well. It's like, well, but God, I'm praying to you to give me the answer. Yeah, I know, but you already know the answer. Just
No, I
do it.
don't. Right.
Just
I
do
don't,
it,
but I don't
right?
know the answer though. But that's
Just
that's
do it. I've already given you the answer. I've already given you the help. I've already sent you the signs. You already know deep inside what you're supposed to do. You're just scared to do it. You're
Mhm.
just scared to do it. And that's what holds most of us back. And when I say scared, it goes back to usually fear. We're afraid, we're fearful to do something or to not do something. And so that keeps us stuck where we are when we already know what we need to do, right? We just don't want to listen. And on the flip side, what's interesting too is, everything always has been, is now, and always will be just fine, right? You say that, Brad. I've heard that before as well.
Mhm.
And and honestly, a lot of times it doesn't matter the decision we make. Whatever decision we make is the right decision to make. Now, in hindsight, we may think, oh man, I wish I would have known this. I would have done it different. But no,
Mhm.
we chose to do it the certain way, even if it caused pain and whatever else, because it was a growth opportunity that we needed to go through. And so, I, my intention, is to not uh, waste time trying to decide something and waiting for this magical guidance to come is to just kind of stop and check in with myself. And how does that look? Well, I'll share with you how it works for me. And, this is going to tie back into some of the things we've said on previous episodes about like going to the grocery store, what food to buy, a simple example is, okay, we're in the meat area. I want to buy a steak. There's these packaged steaks there. Okay, which one is supposed to come home with me? So I glance down, right, at the counter, see if any of them kind of are looking back at me or seem to be like not necessarily shining, but stand out from the others.
Mhm.
And if I'm not sure, I'll pick up two in my hands and I just say to myself silently, is it, which one is, does the highest good for me? Should I pick left or should I pick right? Should I pick left or should I pick right? And when I do it, I will get a kind of a hit, a feeling that I've come to learn that when I have this feeling, that's an affirmative answer. That's a yes answer. And so if I go, is it left? Boom. And I feel it. I take the steak in my left hand and I get home and we cook it up and it's amazing. Right. Okay. That's a simple example, but it can be with anything. Should I look for a new job? Yes or no? Should I look for a new job? Yes or no? As you start to tune yourself, as you start to trust yourself in knowing what you should do, you start asking yourself those questions and you get your own answer.
Mhm.
Right? Does that make sense? And even, again, I heard something last week and when this person said it, I was like, is that what he just said? Boom. Yes. I got the little hit that, yeah, I heard him right. Oh my gosh. Right. And then I'm sitting there recapitulating on it later of what does this actually mean? Does it mean this? Does it mean that? Does it mean this? Does it mean that? All of a sudden, boom. Oh, that's what it meant. Right. So I'm getting the answers from myself, from my
Mhm.
higher self, from the way my body is feeling, right? And we've talked a little bit about that before. Some of this may be a little incognito, so we're going to be a little bit clearer here, right? But when you get a sick feeling in your stomach, when you think about somebody or when somebody comes up to you, that means something. What does it
Mhm.
mean? What's your body trying to tell you, right? And so
Mhm.
we can ask any questions to ourselves and get answers that way if we trust it. Right.
Right.
But a lot of times we're like, oh, no, that's not what that meant. Cause I really don't want to have to do that. No, 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 no.
Mhm.
Let me ask again. Right. And so again, that's the way I do it. Some people use pendulums. Some people, there's
Mhm.
other ways that you can do things. But ultimately, when you check in with your higher self, once you learn what yes and no or maybe kind of means, then you start to be able to answer your own questions very quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think fear, like you said, is definitely the biggest thing that keeps people, that holds them back from making these decisions. Because it's, and I think it's often that we don't, like you said, we know the answer, but we don't want to hear it because we know what it means will have to happen. And great examples are people who are in relationships and they're like, should I stay with this person? And they know the answer is no, that it needs to end, but they're afraid to end it because they know that's what it means. That it means, okay, well, if I do that, then I need to, gonna have to find a new place to live. I'm gonna have to move. I'm gonna have to we're going to have to deal with the kids. We're going to have to deal with bank accounts and lawyers. I mean, and you can go on and on and on with all these things that they mean. And so they just like, okay, well, that can't be right because I don't want to have to do that. So that might not be right. That must not be what it means. Um, and so but deep down, people know. And I think you can ask, you can see it, I think maybe in others a little easier. And maybe that way you can put it back to yourself. If you ask somebody a question, and I'm sure everyone's had the situation where you've been talking and somebody's like, I got a question for you. And they ask you for some advice, and you look at them and you're like, it's clear you already know the answer. Like you already, based on what you're telling me, you know what you need to be doing here or what the answer needs to be here. Are you wanting me to like just to confirm that that's the case or like what is it? And I'm sure we've all seen that in conversation with other people. We do the same things ourselves as we get into this space where we don't want to have to face this decision. We don't want to have to admit that yes, this is what I have to do because of the pain we fear or inconvenience or we just don't know of what this is going to mean for us down the road, and so well, that can't be the case. And so I'm going to avoid making that decision maybe by procrastinating on it. I'm going to keep asking it. I'm going to, keep digging. I'm going to do some more research. I'm going to get on. I'm going to do some Googling, or I'm going to ask more people what they think, or I want to make sure that I'm 100% sure, but they keep on pushing it down because they don't want to have to face the answer that they know already. Um, and I think, especially when it comes to big decisions, big life-changing things that are potentially painful. This is a lot of I see people doing, and I've done it myself. So, I'm not throwing sticks at anybody. I do the same thing. If there's things that I don't want to have to face, I know the answer. Um, but I don't want to have to admit what that
Hmm.
answer is.
No, and it happens a lot because I'm the same way. There's been a lot of different major life decisions that I've delayed. I knew what I needed to do, but I was delaying because again, I wanted before I burned down my life and had to start completely over again, like literally over again, completely over again. I wanted, some guidance. I wanted more of a confirmation. And so I waited when I already knew the answer, right?
Mm,
But I wanted to share too because when I kind of shared how I do it of kind of getting in touch with my higher self, it's not just our higher self, right? This is a way that I'm doing it or kind of being taught to do it that works for me because I know that I'm just this little tiny part of a pinky of my whole higher self. So why should I not, you know, tap into my higher self and take advantage of all of the wisdom of the ages and the things that I already know that I just can't remember because of the amnesia in this physical body, right?
mhm,
So if I can tune there, great, because now I have the wisdom of every since I became a light being and I've lived how many incarnations in different places all over the galaxies. I already know, I've already experienced whatever I'm going through here. I've already had some experience similar to this before. So I already know the answer. Just like in this life, if you experience something that's similar to what you did in your past, you're much better equipped to go through it now because you've experienced it. But I know for some people, and I think I even told you, when I was younger, I prayed to God, right? And to the God that I was kind of taught to have. If that's what you want to do, great, right? If that's what works for people, to pray to a God, to pray to a saint, to talk to your guides or deceased ancestors, if that's what feels comfortable for you, do it that way, right? I talked to my mom and she's been dead for 20 years, right? There was something I just checked in with her about last week. Sit quiet, think about my mom, invite her in, and kind of have a little conversation in my mind, if you will, with my mother, who provided me with guidance. And guess what? I felt that same feeling when she gave me the advice. So I knew it was coming from her, right?
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with that too, right? That there's lots of ways, that we can do it. Animal cards,
Mhm.
is another one. If you have a particular question and you're like, okay, help me answer this question and pull a card, right? That card that you pull is going to help give you the answer. It's just whether or not you want to believe it and follow it, or if you're like, no, 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 that must be the wrong card. Let me shuffle again, right?
Right. Yeah. I meant this other one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was thinking in my mind it should be this card. But when that card didn't drop, right, because that's your tonal and your ego
Yeah.
wanting it to be a certain way instead of the way it
Hmm.
should be. And that's again, that's your thinking brain versus your feeling heart.
Hmm.
The better answers come from your feeling heart and your intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's definitely cards in the deck that I look forward to getting, and there's ones that I don't want to get. Um, like um so wild boar is aggression or aggressiveness. I don't want that one. Like that's just I don't like, because I'm not a very aggressive sort of a person. I'm very more laid back. So I don't like when I get assertiveness, and that's kind of a message. I don't like that one. Um, when I get things like skunk, I'm like, okay, skunk is an okay animal, I guess, but like, what's so fancy about that one? Like I want to get like owl or the raven, or some of those fun animals like that. But like I said, it's all in my head, and I can't allow that to keep me from actually getting the message I'm supposed to get. If I get the wild boar, there's a reason for that. There's something there that I need to be getting. And if I continue to have my head, well, that's not me. That's not who I am. I'm not that kind of a person. I don't like this card. Then I'm going to miss out on the answer.
Mhm.
Because again, I have this idea in my head of what it should or shouldn't be. And I think that's something that's really important when you're asking these questions of yourself is you've got to get rid of um, all the crap going on in your head that's trying to tell you this or that, or you shouldn't do this, or you should do that. Because all of that is the indoctrinations. That's all the filters that you have in your head. And the only way you can get the actual answer is to push all that stuff to the side, and just be quiet and listen
Mhm.
and wait for those feelings. The sensation you get when you pick the right steak, you know,
Mhm.
or the sixth sensation that maybe you get if something's not right, or this person is bad news for you. When you actually listen to those signs, that is what leads you to the right answer.
Yeah, because getting rid of those preconceived notions or of what we think we want to happen, because it's all 3D ego based.
Yep.
Because even as you were talking, you're like, I don't want wild boar. That's aggressive. It's like, oh, Brad, there's a very aggressive part of you that you don't want to let out,
Right.
right? Because at least in your life in this incarnation, you know, you're a nice guy, you're peaceful, you want harmony, and that's great. But sometimes in order to have harmony, there has to be some aggression. It's the balance, right? There always has to be balance. The energies have to be balanced. But there's part of us that it's like, no, I don't want to be that way, right? Because I'm
Hmm.
similar. I'm peace and love and sit on my porch and just, leave me
Watch the
alone
hummingbirds.
and
Yeah.
watch. I was watching hummingbirds this morning. It's cold outside, but they were out there, having fun. I was just enjoying it. But I also know there's a part of me that is a destructor. that at the times when things need to be destroyed, when war needs to reign, I have reigned war and I vanquished all of my enemies, right? That's a part of me that I don't want to let out,
Mhm.
but sometimes it needs to get let out, right? And so I think, but again, if we're going into things with our preconceived 3D notion of this lifetime,
Mhm.
then we think there's a certain answer we should get instead of just, relaxing, letting go, and just allowing our intuition to really come in and give us the answer that we need to at that point,
Yeah.
right? Because it's the same thing. Every time you create something, you have to destroy something to create something. And so, again, over the holidays, I was doing some remodeling work. Well, I have to rip carpet out, right? I have to rip things off the wall. I have to, do other things, before I can repaint and put down new floor coverings and all that stuff. It doesn't mean I'm bad because I'm destroying and ripping the carpet out, right? But there's often destruction that has to happen before the creation, the letting go before we can let in. And I think that's where sometimes with our the decisions we already know, right? The answers we already know, it's because we don't want the destruction before we can have what we want.
Mhm.
And like you said, in the relationships, man, I know that all too well. I mean, trust me, I burned down my life, gotten out of long-term relationships several times now. It's painful. It's painful to go through it. And I don't like going through it, but I like what happens on the other end of it.
Mhm.
And so I think, a lot of times we have to remember that those answers that we don't want to believe, right? That we don't want to have to do, there's something much greater on the other side of the lesson
Mhm.
if we're willing to trust and follow our intuition.
Mhm. I was just saying it. The lessons are.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's probably a good place to end this episode, huh?
Because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is great radio here. You're just sitting here and dead air going on. Which again, another reason why you should watch us on YouTube, because then you could actually see us sitting here pondering, as opposed to just on the listen to the podcast and you're like, did I
Oh,
lose them?
did
Did they
did my Wi-Fi drop? What happened? What
like
happened?
what? Yeah, what happened? Did the Wi-Fi drop? Like what's going? Yeah. Um,
But no, I think it's an important lesson for me to hear again too. I mean, again, that's like as we're sitting here talking, everybody who's listening, we're talking to ourselves as well too, right? I mean, these are things that everybody needs
mhm.
to hear, in different ways because I haven't learned this fully. I'm getting better, but there's still things that I want to drag my feet on
Mhm.
sometimes. Um, but the answers really are inside. Now we can go outside for guidance, right? But ultimately, again, I mean, if you try to 3D, external validation of what you want, then you have confirmation bias comes in. You're gonna
Mhm.
find information that supports the decision you want. That's just psychology. Okay, so first
Mhm.
off, don't even try to go down that path because you're just going to find stuff that's going to support what you want to do, or you're going to get so confused, right? That because so many people are saying different things. If you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different opinions.
Mhm.
So whose opinion really matters? The person making the choice. Because you making the choice, you have to live with the consequence.
Mhm.
So choose wisely, right? but make it your choice, not just what somebody else says their opinion is, right? And that's why it's so important for us to check in with ourselves, check in with our guides, and just do choose the best we can, hopefully from an intuition based standpoint, from our higher self standpoint, from a God standpoint, whatever, you want to use as your way of understanding it.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what answer it comes to you or what decision you make, because everything always has been, is now, and will always be fine. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And even if we drag our feet a little bit, it's because we had to learn a lesson first. And it's
mhm,
okay because
mhm,
everything is always all right.
that's right. That is right.
So, with that, we're going to sign off for the week. Um, but yeah, just, take a few minutes this week to check in with yourself, check in with your guides. If there's decisions that you need to make, start playing with it and start learning how you can get answers for yourself, so that you don't have to rely on others. Because honestly, that's one of the biggest uh, learnings for us on this spiritual path. Once you learn how to do that, once you can trust yourself, once you
Mhm.
can connect that way, that's a huge, huge part of the journey by itself.
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks guys for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and the last one too. Um, a lot of stuff, like you just said, it's not just us talking to you, but it's talking to ourselves as well. So we enjoyed it and got stuff out of it. Hopefully, you will too. So
Yep.
with that, like Jason said, we'll sign off for this week and we will catch you on the next episode.
All right. See you, everybody.